Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for joining us here this morning. My name is Samantha Beacott, and I'm the president of the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation. I want to acknowledge that I'm joining you from Treaty 6 territory in the traditional lands of the Métis. To start us out this morning, I want to have a little recap of our current round of negotiations because it has now been over 1 year since we started our collective bargaining, and just want to remind everyone of where we began and where we are. We had just begun negotiations and billboards started going up around the province, and that really set the tone for this round of negotiations. Through the meetings that we had from May until October, no real negotiations had happened. We presented facts, we presented our arguments, and we heard a lot of no's and take it or leave it offers. In mid-October, we declared an impasse and held a sanctions vote where 95% of members approved sanctions if they were necessary. Conciliation occurred in December and a report came in January. We still saw no movement from the GTBC with Government and School Boards Association. That brought sanction action and our offer of binding arbitration in mid-March to move this process forward. In April, we received what the GTBC had referred to as their final offer. And given that no real negotiations had occurred at the table even up till that point, we took that offer to members and presented it without a recommendation to have their say. 90% of teachers chose to reject their final offer. We held an additional sanctions vote, and again, members said that they are united in the fight for public education. And finally, a year into the process, we had 5 days of good, productive conversations with back and forth negotiations. It didn't result in the improvements that we wanted, but that's the nature of negotiations. Everyone has to give a little bit. As part of our fiduciary responsibilities, the TBC, Teachers Bargaining Committee, and our provincial executive of the STF considered all of the information and decided to recommend the latest offer to members, noting that it is a start and not a firm solution to the issues of classroom complexity. We presented the facts and asked members to decide where the fight for public education would continue. Would we be continuing within the bargaining process or through our advocacy and work with the task force and with the ministry and with School Boards Association? We held our vote, and we know that through that process, our members are smart and critical decision makers. We provided our recommendation, we provided the rationale and the information on what had changed from the prior offer. With 88% of teachers voting, 55% of teachers chose to continue the fight for public education through the negotiations process. This is a message to government that teachers have little trust in their commitments. This is a direct result from our past experiences with committees where the final recommendations are dismissed and ignored, or promises that are never followed through, or provincial budgets that leave school divisions making difficult decisions on which supports to cut or reduce. Every teacher wants to see improved supports for our students, and we are united in the fight to ensure that public education becomes and remains a priority for this government. And not just have that priority reflected in their words, but through their decisions and their actions. The minister has previously said that the best agreements happen at the table. And after 5 days where progress was made and real negotiations have occurred, I agree. We want to get to a negotiated agreement at the table that recognizes the significant needs of teachers and students in schools and addresses the priorities that teachers have brought forward. We have extended an invitation to the GTBC to return to the table with a renewed mandate. We want to move this process forward without any delays. So if we don't hear a response from the GTBC on a path forward to an agreement, then further sanction actions will be announced in short order. As always, we will provide 48 hours notice of any action. And if we're returning to the table, any sanction actions that we have announced would be suspended or canceled. So thank you again for joining me here today. If you have a question, please raise your hand. Alexander.
Thank you, Samantha. I just wanted you to respond. Education Minister Jeremy Cockrell said this morning that he is calling for binding arbitration on this latest offer. What are your thoughts in response to that?
So we had provided that option back in mid-March when no real negotiations had occurred at the table. We would love to get back to the table and start negotiating with the government, provided that they give the GTBC a renewed mandate to address classroom complexity. But if they're not willing to engage in those conversations and have that good faith back and forth conversation, then binding arbitration could be an option for a path forward.
So just to clarify as a follow-up, you'd prefer to go back to the table first, have discussions, and if those don't work out, then do binding arbitration.
Well, we would go back to the table if the GTBC had a renewed mandate, but we have not heard a formal response from the GTBC. We have seen in the past where comments from elected officials, whether it's the Minister of Education or the Premier, come out on social media or through media outlets, and they don't make their way to the bargaining table. And so we are dealing in facts. We deal with the formal communication through the GTBC. We haven't received a response from them yet, but when we do, if they're choosing not to return to the table, then as I said, binding arbitration could be a path forward, but we'll wait till we hear from them directly.
Thank you.
Thanks. Susan?
Hi, I have two questions. The first is, how would you characterize the tone of the meetings that that you have had? Like, I know you said the more recent ones were positive, but or you made progress. But like, would you say the government is coming in as kind of an equal partner and having open discussions, or how would the teachers characterize these meetings?
So the meetings that we're having at the bargaining table don't include elected officials, and so they're appointed representatives of the government. It does include elected school board trustees on behalf of the Saskatchewan School Boards Association. And through the presentation of the information that we brought forward, some of the pieces that we talked about, whether it's around violence and aggression in schools and the issues and challenges with classroom complexity or the issues around recruitment and retention, some of those through the presentation of our information were dismissed or diminished a little bit in terms of the seriousness of each of those issues. But over the last 5 days that we have, there was a change in tone. It did really seem like the GTBC and the members who were at the table wanted to get to an agreement and wanted to move the process forward. And so that's when we got into those good faith back and forth negotiations. And I would hope that those conversations with a renewed mandate for the GTBC can continue so that we can get to a point where we have firm commitments to address the issues around classroom complexity, address the issues with recruitment and retention, and start addressing those big priorities that teachers have brought forward.
Okay, so my second question is, are you seeing a difference, or is there a way for you to track a difference in voting or needs between the rural teachers and the urban teachers? And like rural, I mean, I would include small towns in there. Just like class sizes are obviously different between a bigger city and a smaller community. So what can you say about that?
Absolutely. The issues with classroom complexity are going to be experienced in different ways across the province, but it doesn't mean that those issues don't exist. In large urban centers, we might have really large classes. In smaller rural centers, we might have more split grade or multi-curricula classes. And even then, those class numbers are still increasing. In addition, in all areas, we don't have adequate access to the supports that students need. And so in rural areas, you might have a mental health counselor that is shared amongst schools rather than someone full-time in the building that students can go to when there is a crisis. And then if there is no counselor available, those responsibilities fall to the teacher to provide. We don't have an adequate number of speech language pathologists where students can get timely access. So we know that in all places, there are growing wait lists for students to be able to access those professional supports. So it's not always about the number of students in the class, but it's about the needs of those students and ensuring that those needs are being met. And regardless of what classes look like or where students are in terms of their geographic location within the province, school divisions don't have the resources that they need to ensure that teachers can provide that high quality education to every child coming into their schools.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you. Emily?
Hi, thank you for taking this question. Just the STF recommended members to vote for this most recent tentative agreement, and it was overall rejected. Is there any confidence in STF being questioned right now?
We are confident that we can continue to advocate for our teachers and fight for public education right alongside them. I mean, I go back to that sanctions vote as well. We had 95% of members voting in favor of continuing to take action if necessary. And that shows that we are united in the fight for public education. Our current vote more is a message to government in terms of the lack of trust in the commitments that came forward and the need for having real tangible solutions to start addressing the issues of classroom complexity. There simply wasn't enough there. And as we said before as well, even with the recommendation that it was a start, it wasn't a firm solution, and we were all committed to continuing the fight. Teachers were giving us a direction on where that fight would be, and I respect the decision that our collective made, and we're going to move forward together to ensure that those needs are addressed for our students today as well as into the future.
Amazing, thank you. And if you don't mind, I just have one more question so this has been going on for over a year now. How does it feel knowing it's still going on? There's still got to be a lot more figured out.
Well, as I said, we knew that the fight for public education and improved supports for our students was going to continue whether teachers ratified the agreement or not. So it doesn't change my feelings towards this. There's always work that needs to continue. It's just which venue are we having those discussions in? And so we'll continue to advocate to get back to the bargaining table so that we can have real commitments that protect our working conditions and improve students' learning conditions starting as soon as possible.
Thank you.
Thanks. Susan, I see you still have your hand up. Did you have an additional question?
No, I didn't. Sorry, I'll
Okay.
take it down.
No, that's okay. Thanks. Jacob?
Hi, so thanks for taking my question. With only 88% of membership voting, do you think there might be some voter fatigue among teachers? And or are some teachers not feeling confident enough on either side of the position?
Well, this was a difficult decision for many of our members, recognizing that there's lots of factors to consider in the decision. I would still say 88% of members voting on a collective agreement or voting in a sanctions vote, those are really high turnout rates. So we're actually really pleased by the rate of membership and their engagement through this process. And then that takes me back to why we want to get back to the table and have a negotiated agreement. With the conversation around binding arbitration, that would mean that teachers aren't going to have a final vote on this, although it is a fair judicial process and could be a path forward for us. But we do want to provide the opportunity for teachers to continue to have a final say on what comes through within negotiations.
Awesome, thanks.
Thanks. Stephen?
Thanks. So one of the things that once the details of the tentative agreement became public, there were a lot of feedback on social media from teachers that were very much against the agreement as it was. So two things. Did that surprise you to see that much of a public backlash from the membership of the STF once that the details became publicly known? And the second thing was a lot of people were saying, we already have a perfectly good way to include this with the agreement that was reached in Nova Scotia. Is that something that you'll be looking to take to the table when you return to negotiations, if they do resume?
Absolutely. We have always looked at other provincial organizations and the agreements that have made between those teacher associations and their respective provincial governments and school boards associations. We want to get to a negotiated agreement that provides a solution to start addressing the issues around classroom complexity. I'm not surprised that teachers were frustrated around these items because they have been dealing with these issues for so long. We have been talking about them for a decade, and we need to find real tangible solutions for students today, and like I said, those long-term solutions into the future. I do think that we made a positive start towards being able to find those solutions, but as I said, teachers are burning out. Teachers are struggling to meet the needs of their students, and it is really heartbreaking to be in this profession where we care so much about kids, and we find joy in seeing them succeed. And when you can't meet their needs, it is a discouraging process. So I understand where teachers are coming from on both sides of the issue, but I think, as I said, all teachers recognize that that we need to find more solutions for public education, and whether they said this was a good enough start or not, we need to continue those conversations beyond collective bargaining, beyond a budget cycle, beyond a provincial election. We need to ensure that our elected representatives, whether it's the Minister of Education, the Premier, your MLAs, local school trustees, that they all have education, public education as a priority when they're making their decisions. Jeremy?
Hi there. I'm wondering, just with this vote, 55%, it's almost split. How's that going to affect your leverage going into potential negotiations again?
So as I said, I would look back to the sanctions vote with 95% of teachers saying that they're ready to take additional sanction action if necessary. We're ready to continue the fight for public education. It was just a decision of where that fight for public education was going to occur. So to me, I think that these are significant issues that government and SSBA need to start taking seriously and start recognizing that there are solutions that can be made. There are commitments that can be made in a meaningful way through our collective negotiations process. And we're ready to have those conversations to find a solution that is going to work for students today, and that we can continue to build on for the next round or in future years.
I'm just wondering, from this second offer that was rejected, what more do you think you're going to get on top of that offer for members?
That's a good question. I mean, I would send that to the Minister of Education in terms of the commitments that they're willing to make. I mean, we're talking about providing a basic level of service to our students, whether it is assurances that they will have timely access to mental health counseling, timely access to educational psychologists, so that we can identify what the specific supports are that the students may require, ensure that we have adequate class sizes across the province, where it doesn't mean that smaller classes have to raise so that larger classes can come down. We want to ensure that teachers can deliver that high quality education. And there's a way that we can do that works for Saskatchewan and our very diverse context here within the province. But we need to have the political will to start making those commitments. And so we're ready to have conversations to figure out what's going to work within the Saskatchewan context. We have lots of different suggestions of how that could look, but we need to have willing partners come to the table and engage in those conversations with us.
Okay, thank you.
Thanks. Larissa?
Hi, thanks for taking my question. To your recollection, when was the last time that binding arbitration was used in a collective agreement negotiation with government?
We had binding arbitration. Now I'm going to get the year wrong. I think it was the 2017-2019 collective agreement. We had gone to binding arbitration in that round. Within the last 10 years, we've gone there, but government changed the legislation in 2018, I believe the year was, to remove the option for the Saskatchewan Teachers Federation to choose binding arbitration unilaterally. So now both sides have to agree to that process. So while we had brought it forward as an option earlier, we do need to have both sides agree to it currently.
Sorry, technical difficulties. Thank you.
Okay.
And also just kind of as to help us understand how this works from here on, should you agree to go into binding arbitration, what's sort of the timeline? What does that look like once it's engaged with?
Well, there's lots of factors that can impact what that timeline looks like. It can sometimes be difficult to find an arbitrator here in Saskatchewan specifically because of, there's just not a lot of arbitration lawyers that are available, and so their availability also plays into it. It can sometimes be a bit of a long process. Looking to Ontario, we recently had an arbitration settlement come out, and they had gone to arbitration, I believe, sometime in the fall. So that gives you an idea of how long the timeline could potentially be to get an arbitrated settlement. And so that's why we said having a negotiations at the table where we can get to an agreement and have those improvements actualized in our classes starting in the fall so that students can start getting support sooner rather than later. That's the ideal solution. We have the ability to find those solutions here within Saskatchewan that works within our context, that's mutually agreeable to everyone involved, and where teachers are going to start to see real improvements to the supports that are available for them to be able to provide that high quality education to every child. So that's our goal. We want that sooner rather than later, because the longer that this process is delayed just means that there are more students going without the support that they deserve and have a right to.
Thank you.
Thanks. Alexander?
Yeah, I'm back with more questions. You mentioned sanctions are possibly back on the table depending on what happens. What are we looking at in terms of sanctions? Is that affecting graduation? What's on the table?
Well, any of the actions that are available to us are on the table, although, like I said, it is our hope that we're able to get back to the bargaining table with the GTBC and a renewed mandate from their side and a commitment from government and the SSBA to start finding those solutions. That's our focus. Our focus has always been on the goal of getting an agreement that addresses the priorities of teachers, and we'll continue to have that focus. But if government is delaying the process in any way or not responding to what we have put forward, and not providing a real commitment to come back with a renewed mandate, then we are left with no other option other than to apply sanctions to try and move this process forward.
55% of the teachers who voted rejected the agreement. I guess, is there more that the STF could have done to encourage teachers, or because you did endorse this proposal, so I'm just wondering what your thoughts are on that.
No, we presented the facts to our teachers. And like I said, teachers are smart. They are incredibly critical, and they have been living with these challenges around classroom complexity and deteriorations to their compensation due to a loss of purchasing power now for a decade and through our last several collective agreements. And teachers have said, we need to have real solutions to these issues. We cannot continue any further with promises that can be broken or commitments that don't get followed through with. We need to find solutions now to ensure that our students are well supported and that they have the ability to thrive in their education so that they can have a successful future as well.
And just kind of focusing on the end of the school year with graduations coming up, do you see this impacting that at all, or this won't even go hand in hand with that?
It could, as always, our job action could have an impact on instruction. It could have an impact on some of those extra activities that students take or participate in within their school community. But our goal is to get to an agreement that is going to improve the experiences of students in the classroom. And that is the core work of what teachers do, is provide instruction to ensure that students are able to learn and to achieve their full potential through their educational career, right from kindergarten to grade 12. So that's the goal that we're going to continue to focus on. We're hopeful that we hear a response from the GTBC and we can get back to the table and negotiate an agreement that is going to have tangible improvements to the experiences of students and teachers in classrooms.
Thank you.
Thank you. So thank you so much, everyone, for your participation. I know there's lots of members of the public and teachers probably or potentially online listening as well. All of the members of the media. This has been a year and you have been through it with us. So thank you so much for your attention to these issues and your commitment to ensure that the realities of our current situation are shared with members of the public. So thank you so much for everyone's participation and all of the great questions. I hope you have a great rest of your day and a wonderful weekend.